What's up, guys? Welcome back to the show. It's good to be with you today. Today, I'm excited about our episode. I'm on with a guy who is extremely knowledgeable about the industry of outdoor and hunting stuff. Probably one of the best big mule deer hunters alive out there today. He's one of the co-founders of Rokslide, the hunting forum, and like I said, just extremely knowledgeable about gear, Western hunting, tactics, and stuff like that. And he's also a believer. So if you're not familiar with him or you haven't guessed yet, my guest today is Robby Denning, who I'm excited about sharing this episode with you guys. Way back when I asked him to be on the show, he agreed and sent me a copy of his book. So it's called Hunting Big Mule Deer. It's an awesome book, whether you're new to hunting mule deer, or hunting out west, or even if you've been hunting mule deer your whole life. There's just some awesome knowledge in here about, he covers everything from, footwear and fitness and optics to tactics, a couple great stories, e-scouting, research, just pretty much everything head to toe. And Robby's a guy who has dedicated his entire hunting career, which is a lot of the focus of his life, honestly, to hunting big mature mule deer. So he's kind of a expert in that. He sort of decided to prioritize hunting big mule deer and just has been going after that. Super good guy to talk to. Like I said, very knowledgeable about the industry and about hunting, and very generous guy by sending me his book, and he signed a copy of it for me. So if you get a chance, definitely check out his book. Check out his stuff on YouTube, on Rokslide. They have a podcast as well, and definitely can learn about big mule deer from Robby. So it's a great conversation. We talk obviously about mule deer. We talk a lot about faith and what role that's played in his life and making him the hunter and the entrepreneur and the author and the man that he is. So it's a really cool episode. And so, if you're watching this on YouTube, also, I just want to mention, so this episode is going to be audio only, even though I'm doing this video intro right now. I have a backlog of a bunch of really good episodes that I recorded over the past couple months before I started making the switch to go into YouTube, or going to YouTube in addition to your podcast platform. So that is the direction the podcast is going. We're going to be doing video podcasts on all our podcasts moving forward. Like I said, it is a lot more work, and it takes difficulty from about a 2 to a 10, but I think it's worth it. So I'm going to be doing all my podcasts moving forward with video. However, I have a backlog of some great content that's audio only. So, I'm going to sprinkle in some of my new podcasts, which are video and audio, and maybe do every other week kind of thing with the ones that I have backlogged that are audio only. But don't worry, we are going that direction to video only. Not only, we're going to be, you're going to continue to be able to get the podcasts on, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, all those places, no matter what. But we're going to also have YouTube, and that'll be whether or not we have video. But that's where we're headed. So I hope you'll subscribe to the YouTube channel and stay tuned. Obviously, I'm going to have some really cool film projects coming up this fall, one of which just got solidified this week, actually, that I'm really excited about. I'm going to wait to make that announcement, but basically it's a September project I'm going to be doing on top of my Kodiak thing and on top of the Wyoming thing. I'm teaming up with another content creator that I know you guys have heard of, and I'm going to be helping him shoot and produce a hunt in New Mexico. So more on that later, but I want to hold you in suspense a little bit there on that one. Anyway, I want to continue kind of giving away some decals and stuff to guys who have been leaving me 5-star reviews and ratings on Apple. If you haven't done that yet, please take a minute to leave me a rating and review on Apple, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Again, you can find that YouTube channel and the link in my Instagram bio, or just search my name, which is Hunter McWaters, in YouTube, and you'll find that. So, but right now, if you're listening, Three Rivers Outdoors OK, Pacer 01, Outlaw 41, Kaeo Subiono, hope I'm saying that right, and Colin Rooney 8. If you guys email me at hunter@thisishuntersquest.com, I'll get you some decals in the mail. And again, I really appreciate those reviews. So, lastly, going into this one, I was reading the Bible the other day in my spiritual time, my spiritual discipline, spiritual fitness time, and came across this one. It's a short and sweet verse, but I think it really fits Robby in this episode well. And so this is from Habakkuk, which is in the Old Testament. He's an Old Testament prophet. So it's Habakkuk 3:19. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. So again, short and sweet, but I think it fits Robby perfectly because he's very open about the fact that the Lord is his strength. And, we even see that in a story he tells us in the top of the podcast. That is an amazing story, kind of got him started in the world of Big Mule Deer, and something where his faith really became a tangible thing that kept him going, and he ended up shooting, I think, the biggest mule deer of his life. But anyway, the sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. Amen. So that's Habakkuk 3:19. And all right, well, now we're going to head on over to this episode with Robby. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, well, I'm here with my guest today. Really excited to get a chance to catch up with Robby Denning. How you doing, brother?
Hey, good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, it's great to be with you. So yeah, just jumping in here, man. I've been able to hear a little bit from you on this. I'm doing this founder speaker series thing with Heather, and that's been cool. So, but never really gotten to talk back and forth with you. So I'm excited about it, man.
All right. Has the Founders series been helpful?
Yeah, it has. I learned a lot during your session, especially one thing that was good for me was just hearing about, building those personal relationships. And, I was kind of, with my go-getter attitude, I still kind of wrestle with, am I supposed to be kind of aggressive, trying to, forge partnerships, or should I just kind of slow play it a little bit? So I'm still trying to find balance there, but I learned a lot, and it's been good.
Build your business slowly. Don't ever be afraid of that concept. And sometimes, things speed up. They really do. And you got to be aggressive. You got to be ready for that. But I've kind of found if that's your only tool in the toolbox, boy, you can make a lot of messes, and you can end up in a lot of relationships that probably are unequally yoked, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
And I know the world is like, pound it, and, just more. Sometimes that's not the way of the Lord. There can be times for that, but I've kind of found that, he'll let you know when you need to do that. I think in this big world, especially where we're all kind of connected virtually, we forget that those are people on the other end of those screen names and accounts and emails and stuff. And they're just like us. And, they want somebody to trust. They want to grow their business too. Most people do not want to be compelled to say yes.
Right.
And, So that's just something the Lord kind of changed for me over the years. Like I learned it in my outfitting business that I'm an honest person, but I could paint a picture to a potential client pretty easily and get them pretty excited. But if I stood back and just really looked at it and I thought, you know what, I'm telling them the truth, but they don't have the same perspective that I do of hunting and even in a good place, how hard it can be.
Yeah.
And things like that. And so I just really started to tone it back, almost to maybe even talking people out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I noticed I ended up with better customers, better relationships with those customers.
Yeah.
And it was just God kind of just showing me that, you can be telling the truth, but you can still, I don't want to use the word deceive because I was never purposely trying to do that with people, but maybe not be accurate, and not take in their perspective. And I think that applies to the stuff we've been talking about in the Founder Series about building businesses and everything, so anyways.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off too. I mean, like I think you said, under promise and over deliver. And that
absolutely, man.
Yeah, and it really takes the pressure off. I can imagine, especially like an outfitting type situation, but in everything, that's wisdom,
Yeah, well, our human nature is the opposite.
Right.
We overpromise and we don't even really realize it. I learned that from a guy that ran a Cadillac dealership in Texas. It was a book I read, and he was like the number one dealer. And, he just said, what does it boil down to? And that's what he had kind of learned is, it's pretty easy to sell a Cadillac, if you think about it. But he says it's also really easy to overpromise on a lot of things. And so I just kind of started applying that to my business and stuff. And, I work in personal training primarily. And it's another place it's easy to overpromise.
Oh, yeah.
And, but it slows things down, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with it. They're looking for the big deals and the fast track to everything. And like I said, sometimes God does move that way. You want to be ready for that too. You got to be able to move when people are ready to move.
For sure, man. So just how was your 2020 hunting season, man?
Well, it's always good to be out hunting, but it was the first time I had not filled a tag in a decade, and I actually hunted more. That I just ended up with some good tags last year, just the way things had kind of come together. So I was hunting early season clear to the end of November, not the whole time, but I mean I had tag opportunities in that time. And the year before, my son and I had taken 3 bucks, and so our freezer was in great shape. And I still hunt that way of kind of, if the freezer's lean, the standards are lower. If the freezer's full, the standards are high.
Yeah,
because I really, my dad taught me, young, and I think a lot of people do this. I'm not saying they don't, but some people don't. They're you eat what you kill.
Absolutely.
And it's I've kind of carried that through as I got older. And sometimes it's like, we got enough here. This is a good time to really be picky. So that's what I was last year. And I passed up a lot of really good bucks that on other years, I would have tried to get.
Yeah.
And, when you hear me say passing up a buck, I'm talking about sometimes just seeing one and deciding not to hunt them. It doesn't mean I could have got them.
Right.
The way I hunt mule deer, I see a lot of bucks that still, just because you saw them does not mean you can kill them.
Sure.
And so when I say that, it's not like I had my finger on the trigger and I'm sizing him up and he's 3 inches too short on that side. Nothing like that, but it was like I saw some good bucks that I was like, on another year I would be figuring out how to stalk him, or sometimes you spot him from a couple miles away, which is sometimes foreign to an Eastern hunter, that you actually see an animal that you can't shoot. But it's like, in fact, most of the bucks I see I can't shoot, just by the way I hunt. So you gotta make your plans to get in their living room, that I call it, and let them make a mistake. And so I didn't do that last year. I stayed back, and I can't remember how many days I hunted, Hunter. It was almost too many. I was really tired. Probably 40,
Dang.
45 days of open season.
Wow.
Somewhere in there. And it was good. It was good to really get out there and be picky like that.
Sure.
But I did not end up taking an animal. Although in Colorado, I did shoot at one on the last day, and there's a video out there on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, called Hunting Big Mule Deer with Travis and Robby. And that was a good buck, so I did have a chance at a good buck, and I just missed, and it was only like at 135 yards. But if you go watch that film, it was a pretty justifiable miss. I was shooting through a little tiny gap in the timber.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us, man.
Oh yeah. So there was a chance, I did pull the trigger. But then, hunted on another tag clear into late November, and it was a little disappointing, but you know what, that's just hunting. And I've just kind of learned that, well, you can't be disappointed too long.
Yeah.
You got to get up and get moving, or you'll talk yourself out of it. You'll start thinking the best days are behind. And I just can't hunt that way. I just always got to be thinking ahead that nope, this is how it is, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, the good times aren't over, as Merle Haggard tried to say.
Yeah. So, like, speaking of that, what do you got planned for 2021?
I don't know. I'm still kind of waiting on what I scout up.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes
okay.
I don't even know what I'm hunting until a couple days before the season opens.
Gotcha.
But no big tag opportunities this year. Probably just be hunting my home state of Idaho, unless just something comes that I'm not thinking I'm going to get. Because right now, let's see, Colorado drew yesterday, and I was in for a tag that was about a 30% chance of drawing, and I didn't get it. And that was actually, I got to think, that was probably my best odds tag that I've put in for this year. So meaning everything else has lower odds than that.
Right.
So that could just be hunting the home state and just trying to turn over a buck here. And sometimes that's my favorite kind of hunting. But our archery season opens August 30th.
Nice.
And I have literally some years not known where I'm going until the 28th or 29th. Somewhere in there. Like I could be on one side of the state or the other side of the state. It just depends on what I find.
Yeah. I hear you, man. It's good that you have some good options at home too.
Oh yeah.
Well, when I originally talked to you about setting up this interview, you sent me a copy of your book, which, thank you. It's an awesome book.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. One of my favorite stories in it is the story you open the book with, which is kind of the story that got you started with, your kind of all in big mule deer kind of lifestyle. I'd love to hear you tell me that story if you don't mind, for the listeners.
Oh, sure, man. Yeah, the name of that chapter is the one that started it all, because that truly was the one that started it all for me. And I'm a Christian. I'm pretty sure that's why you reached out to me on this podcast. And I didn't grow up as a Christian. I was actually, my family's been heavily involved in cults for a couple of generations.
Oh, wow.
And so that always kind of leads to a relationship with God that's kind of based on some false foundations.
Yeah.
And you end up being really afraid of God, like he's going to smash you like a bug.
Yeah.
Because the cults are almost always based on man's righteousness and man's ability to get to God. And the common thing in a lot of those is, that Jesus Christ, he's just a man, is what they try to teach you. So I didn't really have a lot of love for God in my family. I had fear.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any love for him, and didn't realize his goodness. And so I got saved when I was 23, just like an 18-year-old young Christian gal, just loved the Lord, grew up in a Christian home, wasn't afraid of telling anybody about Jesus. And, she sat me down. She said, "This is the way it is." And man, it was the first time I had ever heard anybody really talk about the love of God. And man, I think I got saved right when I heard it.
Yeah.
And so that actually
awesome.
ties into the story, and I'll tell you why. Because I was still only 23, and just I didn't get into a church. I didn't even really understand the Christian churches. The growing up in the cults. You have one church you go to, and that's the only one you can go to. And so I just didn't really know what to do, and so I kind of just floundered in my faith. It didn't really grow, and got married, and pretty unequally yoked relationship. And God bless the gal. I'm not married to her anymore, but we were just doing what sinners do. We didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And that relationship only lasted about 10, 12 months. And so by that time, I'm almost 27, and I was going through some really, really rocky times in that relationship. And, and it was a 50-50 deal. I don't want to make it sound like it was her fault. I mean, it was both of us just not knowing how to treat your partner.
Right.
And I went through some heavy temptation, and I knew enough of God to just say, hey, Lord, I surrender to you in this. I don't know what to do in this situation, but I just surrender to you in it. And I did. And so let me tie that to the buck story.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of people are going to have a real hard time with this. Some of my worst reviews on Amazon are my book. And because people are like, man, this dude just walks around praising God because he killed a big buck. Well, I believe that all good things come from God's hand. And if something is of the Lord, and it's important to you, it's important to him.
Yeah. And
man, a lot of people have a hard time with that. They just think he's just this big guy in the sky that, maybe you get to see him when you die, but it doesn't have much to do with your lives. And I don't believe that at all.
Yeah. And like you said, it's the goodness of God that draws men to repentance, not fear.
That's how I closed my book. If you pay attention, that's in the last chapter of the book. It's the goodness of God that draws us to him. And
Absolutely.
so anyways, tying it to the buck story. Okay. Is in August of 96. This is when I was going through all this turmoil with my marriage and just not really knowing what was going to happen. I found still to this day, the biggest deer I have ever seen on the hoof. And I was just kind of scouting, like I was talking about a minute ago, getting ready for season and everything. And I found this buck, and I just knew that, okay, he was about 5 miles from a road, horseback type country had to get into. I had hunted it on years prior. I knew it a little bit. And I had actually seen him the year before, but he was still pretty big. He was probably 195, 200 then. And I actually went back to check on him. And then there would have been a 30-incher there the year before. So, just bucks are like crops, sometimes one area just comes on. Yeah. You have a good crop in that area. And so I checked on that place and found this buck. And the reason I know it was the same buck from the year before is he had very identifiable cheaters at the junction of his G1, his G2 and his G3. Okay. And then just various little stickers sticking out everywhere that were kind of small the year before. And he had great brow tines. And so anyways, I went back in there. It was the 7th of August. So I went in on the 6th and spent the night. And that morning I got up and was glassing at daylight and spotted this big non-typical across canyon over on another ridge, and man, he just blew me away how big he was. I still remember sitting there just like rubbing my eyes like, is this real? And as I got looking at him, I realized this is that buck from last year. I could just tell, and I thought, if it's not him, it's his twin brother, and he's just he had put on 30 inches from the year before. Wow. And he was a big buck the year before. So anyways, I thought, okay, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. I'm throwing everything I got at it. We have an archery season we can hunt, and then we have a rifle season we can hunt on the same tag. And so I just thought, this is what I'm going to do. And so, hunted my tail off through archery season after him, put in a lot of days, never saw him. And, he was with another buck that was a big wide buck. And he was there. I saw him during the archery season, but just never did see this other one. And plus, there was like 3 or 4 other, kind of nice bucks that were there. And I kept seeing other bucks in there. I just kept thinking I was going to turn him over. And so this temptation that I was under really to end my marriage is probably the best way to put it. I just had said, you know what, God, I know that's not your will. And I didn't even know the verses really in the Bible about divorce and adultery. I didn't even know that stuff, but it was basically the Holy Spirit was just putting on me that as bad as your marriage seems, God does not want you to make this move to get divorced. And everybody in my circle was like, divorce her, get away from her, except for one guy. And he was a Christian, and I'm still friends with him all these years later. He was the only guy in this circle of 5, 10, 15 people that was like, I know it's bad, but God can do a lot with a broken relationship. And I just want you to hang on. Huh. And so I did. I just said, okay, Lord, I'm going to do it. And so this is not in that chapter in the book. No, yeah. This is extra. Right? Yeah, this is extra. Right? It's probably the only podcast I would tell this part of the story on. Now, the story that's in the book, that's just the physical part of the hunt and all the days I put in, how I couldn't find the buck during archery season. And then rifle season opened, and it was kind of funny. I ended up finding a really big buck in another place. I hunted him for a few days of the rifle season. That was even bigger than this buck. That was an incredible year for big non-typicals for me. Somebody else ended up killing that buck, and almost right in front of me. And it was just like, wow, just like such a downer. Yeah. And I won't apologize. I'm a deer hunter at heart. That's how God made me. This stuff must be important to me because I dedicated my whole life to it. Yeah. It ranks below providing for my family. It ranks below my relationship with God. But it's right up there with the most important things in life. And some people have a real problem with that. Yeah. And I don't know what to tell you. It's what I've thought about. It's what I enjoy. It's just what has made me, as a person. Yeah. It's just what I do. And so, I had that same passion then, and I was so devastated that guy got that other buck. But I just thought, you know what, I got to get back after this other one. I know this other one is there somewhere, even though I couldn't find him in the archery season. And I was only home like one day, and I'd been on this other buck for like a week, and, I had quite a bit of time off. I've always worked very hard. I'm not a hunting bum. But I always worked very hard to make sure I had the time to do what I needed to do, if that meant working harder, and I've had the same job for 30 years. And so the man I worked for, he kind of understood how I was wired. He knew I was taking care of his business. So when it was time for me to do what I needed to do, I could do it. So I was just home that one day, packed the horses up, and headed into the high country. And I got there the night before the elk season opened, and there were just hunters everywhere. A lot of elk pressure in that area. Yeah. And 5 miles in, and I still could not camp where I needed to camp because there was a big wall tent set up there. And just up and down this drainage, it's like about a mile long. There was 2 or 3 other camps. I was like, wow. So I had to camp in a little bit different spot. I had to go like knock on some guy's tent and say, man, is it okay if I camp over there in that meadow? I mean, I realize it's public ground, but I don't want you wondering why I just moved in. He was cool. He's like, oh yeah, camp right over there, man. So so I got up the next morning, and remember, man, my marriage is falling apart at this time. It is very hard to be in the mountains and thinking about this stuff and what you need to do. And keep in mind, my marriage in my mind is not falling. I mean, I couldn't do anything about it being at home. It was what it was without getting into all the details. And so, but I had been in the holding pattern that I had agreed with my friend, my Christian friend, that, okay, man, I am not going to seek divorce. I'm going to seek reconciliation. And that's what I had done to the best of what one baby Christian full-on sinner could do. And so, I was there about 6 or 7 days. We just got pounded with snow, and the elk hunters had kind of started to pull out. And right in this basin, it's kind of a big quakey filled basin. I think you guys call them popples out there, but just big brushy basin. And there was elk hunters all over in that thing, but there was still bucks in there. I'd seen a couple bucks in there. So I thought, well, the bucks haven't moved out. I'm just going to keep hunting here. And, when you spend that much time alone in the mountains, your daily consciousness almost becomes prayer. And what I mean by that is, like if you pray on a regular day, you're just like, oh yeah, I need to pray about this, and you humble yourself before the Lord and you pray, you do all that stuff. But when you're alone that much,
you're just praying.
I find it doesn't. You just flow right into prayer. You're just talking to God. I mean, you might be talking to yourself, but you're talking to God.
Yeah, totally, man.
And that whole marriage thing was on my mind, and I was like, Lord, I'm trying to do it right, but honestly, I'd be more comfortable to be divorced right now, not worried about this big mess. And that was kind of where I was at. And so I've been there 7 days. I've not seen the buck. And on the 6th or 7th day, that's where the story picks up in my book on that track.
Yeah.
And I found a good, heavy, blocky buck track in the same country where I had been seeing this buck, basically on the backside of the ridge, and cut it, not long after daylight, 7, 8, 9 in the morning, something like that. And I'm like, if this is not him, this is another really big buck. And as you heard me talk about, there was quite a few big bucks right there that couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, if this is not him, it could be one of those other ones. I need to follow it. So I got on the track, followed it around the backside of the mountain. It climbed up onto a big ridge, and then it dropped down on the backside of a ridge on a super steep slope, which is typically the kind of stuff that they'll bet on. And, and for people that don't live in the West, it's completely different tracking deer here than it is in, typically the East, because the terrain is so steep. A buck can literally put 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of distance between you and him in an hour because of the steepness of it, where I have found tracking in flatter terrain. I don't want to say I can keep up with them. If they start running, I can't, but they don't have the advantage of, they're just so physically able to it's nothing for them to climb a 30-degree slope, where a man, that's clawing and scratching and going 5 yards and resting. And you know what I mean? Yeah. And so this buck got onto that slope, but he was headed down. And I thought, oh man, I got the advantage. I can actually keep up with this deer. So I'm moving down that slope fairly fast. His tracks start to swing from left to right. I can tell he's feeding a little bit, and it's usually a sign they're going to slow down and they're going to bed. And this is semi broken timber. It's a good place to catch a buck. It's not so thick that you're just going to be standing on top of him by the time you see him. And out here we hunt with scopes, and so that can be really difficult to get a shot at a buck in the cover with a scope. At like 20 yards. And so I thought this is ideal. And so I've just slowed down to a crawl, watching for this buck to see if I could just either see him up or see him bedded. A lot of times, the first time they'll bed in kind of, they might even bed right out in the open, or they'll bed up under a spruce tree with high branches. And, it's just kind of a easy place for them to lay. Maybe they have more visibility. Maybe that's why they lay there, to look around a little bit, kind of let things settle down. These bucks are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So they've been followed by cats and coyotes and bears, and they don't just go lay down anywhere. And so I find if I can kill them the first bed that they get into, that's usually my only chance, because after that they'll get up and they usually move into cover. And that's where it gets super hard. You might know they're in there, but trying to get a shot is so hard. And so I'm just expecting this buck to be pretty vulnerable, everything together. And I've probably been on his track now, I can't remember, hour and a half, 2 hours. And I look down, and coming from my left to my right, here's a set of fresh boot tracks, smoking hot boot tracks. And I am clear down on a 30-degree slope. Most of the hunters I've been seeing have been up on top. They don't venture off of on those slopes, and neither do I, unless there's a good reason to go down there, because it's a butt kicker to get around on them. What in the heck? Where did this guy come from? And I kind of start following his tracks, and I realize he is following the buck too, but he's going way too fast. I can just tell by his stride, like this dude is cruising. And in fact, at first, I didn't even think he was following the buck. I thought he was just walking through the area. But I realized every once in a while he would stop and look at the track. I'm like, oh, my gosh, he's on this same buck. I cannot believe he's on the same buck. I mean, it's just devastating.
Yeah.
And so I didn't follow it all that far, maybe couple hundred yards. And that buck had, I cannot remember now, this has been like 25 years ago, he had either bedded or he had gone down to feeding at a snail's pace, which instead of zigging side to side, they're kind of grabbing stuff as they're walking.
Right.
Now they're stopping and eating at a bush. They'll stand there for a couple minutes, and that's usually when you can tell this buck's getting ready to lay down. He's filling his tummy. Well, that buck went from doing that, or like I said, I might have discovered a bed, I can't remember, to on a dead run. You could just see, and these bucks, they're just like whitetails, they'll bound 20 feet, and I could see he was just bound, and this guy was right on him, and so that's why I was talking about how different it is to track deer out here. That there's no way you can catch a buck like that in that type of country. If they're on to you. Because there's just I've tried for 25 years. You gotta get them when they don't think you're following them.
Yeah.
So I was just devastated, and I'm 90% sure it's the buck that I've been after all this time, and I just sat in the snow, and I'm a 52-year-old man. I still cry over big mule deer. I mean, I'm passionate about them, and they're hard to get. They break your heart, and if they don't break your heart, then you're probably not very passionate about them. I mean, and especially big ones, they are so hard and so far and few in between. So I just sat in the snow, and I was exhausted. It was part of it too. And just rested my head on my knees, and I started praying. The first time I wrote that story was in Rusty Hall's Trophy Hunter magazine. It's probably back in there, about 98, if anybody has a copy. The first time I wrote that story, it was called The Prayer. And it was kind of a different version of what's in my book, because the book one kind of had to be tight and fast, and opening chapter. And so I talked a little bit more about it in that story, that I just sat there and just prayed that, well, God, I really want to give up. I hate this. I can't believe this just happened. This is the second big buck that's got away from me in a week, because I'd lost that other big non-typical to that guy. And I was just discouraged. And I had been hunting, I was 27 years old. I had been hunting mule deer full dedication since I was 21. I just decided this is the direction I want to go with my life, and this is what I want to do. And I had really, really, really gone after it. And I was even in that prayer, like, God, is this even something you even want me to do? Is this even where the direction you want my life to go?
Don't you love how hunting can make you question your entire existence?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And I think God puts us in those situations because, then we know what we know. Yeah. We know who we are. And that's why I don't apologize for being just a passionate deer hunter. And I've had a few casual Christian friends that have even suggested it's idolatry. And I'm like, well, it's not idolatry to me, because I know where it ranks in my life.
Right.
And I know where my relationship is with the Lord. And I have seen him put his stamp of approval on it so many times. That's awesome. It's either from the Lord or Satan is able to be the Lord, and I don't think he is. I mean, he can deceive us, he can lie to us, He can do all that stuff, but he can't be God. That's what he wants to be, but he can't be.
Sure.
And so anyways, I put all this stuff in there because that's how important this story was for my life, and that's why it was the first chapter of my book, because it really did set the trajectory for my life. And so I'm praying, like, God, I'm ready to give up. I'm ready to be done with this. I think you're done with it at this point in my life. Just show me where to go and what to do. And I started hiking back up the ridge. And the whole marriage thing I'm talking about, this is weighing on me too. Like, maybe this is, part of the whole problem, maybe you just don't know. Get to the top of the ridge. It takes like, I don't know, half hour or so. And I'm exhausted again, because I just climbed up a 30-degree slope. And 30 degrees doesn't sound very steep, but go stand on one, man. It's like clawing your way up a slope.
Yeah.
I got up top and I sat on this ridge, and now I'm looking into the basin from a completely opposite angle, and I could see a little better. And I thought, I should probably sit here and look around, just check it out for a while.
Sure.
And haven't really got to look at it from this angle. I hadn't even raised my binoculars yet, and with my naked eye, I saw a deer standing down in the heavy Quakies, broadside to me, looking up to my right. And I had pretty good peepers back then, and I could immediately tell that's him.
Oh,
that's
man.
that buck. And I threw my binoculars up, and oh man, this is only the second time. Well, it's the third time I've seen him in 2 years. Second time I've seen him that year. And it's not the kind of buck you just go, yeah, okay, yeah, his brow tines are pretty tall. Yeah, he's got some cheaters. It's like, no, that is a giant buck, and that is him. And I'm just blown away. I just walked into this buck.
Yeah.
And I don't think he sees me, even though he's kind of looking up on the ridge I'm on. And so I had to crawl forward. And, this is deep snow, like a foot deep. You have to be careful with your rifle not to get your scope bell full of snow. And I got propped up and on my elbows, and I'm shooting prone, and got the scope on him. And I still remember we were right in the middle. It'd been snowing all morning, but you know how sometimes like halfway through a snowstorm, just the hole in the clouds floats over the sun. You got all this snow falling around you, but the sun shining down on the ground.
Beautiful.
It was doing that, dude. It was friggin'. I still got that in my mind.
Wow.
That just incredible. All that sunshine shining on that snow and that giant buck standing there. I couldn't believe it. So I let her rip, and shooting a 7 mag with no muzzle brake, and got back on him after I shot, and he's holding perfectly still, just standing there. Ooh. And this is about 300 yards. This is before rangefinders, but since then I've been back, and it's like 270 or something like that. Uh-huh. But I was holding right. I knew he was about 300. I knew it was a dead on hold. And so, man, I jacked another shell in and let her rip. And, I'm nervous. Yeah. I'm flipping way nervous now. And by the time I got recovered and got on him, I couldn't see him anymore. And just dead silent in the woods. After a rifle goes off like that and quits echoing, you're just sitting there like, wow, this is intense. What just happened, God? I mean, and I'm already starting to think about, wait a minute. It was like 15 minutes ago, I was praying, like, is this even where I go with my life?
Yeah.
What do I do with my life? What do you want me to do with my life? What direction do you want me to go? And I'm just like, I think I just killed that buck. So I gathered up my stuff, made a circle around the basin, and got down to the trees that he was standing in. And these are Quakies, so they're like 6 feet tall, super brushy, and you can't really see into them very far. I kind of get over where I thought he was. Bam, there's a great big skid trail headed down the mountain, nice. Just like what it looks like when you drag a buck out.
Yeah.
Full of blood and tunneling down the mountain. And yet I can't see him. That's how steep it was.
Jeez.
Like, gosh, where is he? So I kind of, got my rifle to my shoulder, because it don't matter if you drop them, they can jump right back up and take off. I'm kind of moving in, and I come around just a little pile of brush where I couldn't see past, man. There he was. I still remember him. Still remember laying there. His front legs were caught up in all those cheaters in his antlers.
Oh man.
Because they were like a great big hairbrush sticking out there, just grabbing everything as he slid down the mountain. And I remember just standing there in disbelief, going, I just killed that buck. and it was more than killing a buck. And so my brothers that are out there that are hunters, that are kind of thinking, wow, this dude's way too much into this. We all got our own path. We all got our own experiences. And that, to me, was God putting his stamp of approval on my life, that, I know you're living for me. Yeah. I'm going to give you this because I love you, because of what that verse we just quoted. It's the goodness of God that draws us to him. Yeah. And dude, the whole thing of my marriage and all that temptation that I was under, we don't earn our righteousness by any mean at all. Mm-hmm. That comes from Christ. I'm still just a sinner. saved by grace.
Yeah.
But I do know he is the rewarder of good works.
Yes.
The Bible says his eyes search to and fro across the earth, looking for anyone that would do his will.
Mm-hmm.
And in that one little tiny way of my life, my messed up, tumultuous life, God was telling me, I know you're trying to do it right.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't totally doing it right,
Right.
That's what I want to make sure. I don't want to get into the gory details with everybody.
Yeah.
But my heart was his, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
He was letting me know, I know your heart is mine.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take care of you.
And it's so like,
and he did.
Yeah. And it's so, like, it's such a good analogy for the whole thing. Like, you're out there trying your hardest, and turns, on your own strength, you're actually chasing the wrong deer, if I'm recalling the story correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the wrong buck.
Right. And so you're like in this despair of, I lost another one. You're trying so hard to get it, and then you go back and it's like, God just gave it to you, the one you were actually after. And, but you had to be on the wrong path for God to put the right path in front of you. It's crazy.
Absolutely, man. That's exactly what it is. And that's what the story in the book was all about. Even though I didn't get to really kind of show the backstory of the spiritual side of it, that was exactly it. I wasn't even tracking the right buck.
Yeah.
And yet,
but you were out
God
there.
still handed it to me.
Yeah. And the important thing is, like you said, your heart was right. It's analogous with your relationship with God. Like, your heart was right. You were out there putting in the work, you weren't sitting in your tent like, God, send me a buck. You were out there working for it.
Yep.
You were a little off. You weren't quite doing the right thing, but because you were out there doing it, God then was like, okay, now I'm going to just drop this here. So cool.
And he did, dude. It was a complete miracle. It's the biggest hunting miracle that's ever happened to me in my entire life.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't think there'll ever be another one, and that's fine with me, because that buck still means the most to me. Maybe not the buck itself, but the whole experience.
Yeah.
Of how God just kind of tied my life together right then.
Yeah. And taught you to rely on him.
I had already. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't cut you off, but also it taught you just to rely on him. When you're in that moment, like crumpled at the bottom of the tree, you had him to fall back on. You had something, and then he kind of gave you that tangible help to kind of keep going.
And he did, man. And he did. And I decided then, I had already decided I was following the Lord. I had already decided that. I had decided that 3 years ago when I gave my life to him. But just what I said in the book, it set the trajectory in my life. And I thought, this is the direction he wants me to go. This is when I'm talking about hunting big bucks.
Sure.
One of the things, not the thing. It's where people get confused and I start talking about this stuff. This is not all I live for. Right. I live for my wife. I live for my kid. I live for my relationship with the Lord. I'm a responsible business owner. I've employed hundreds of people in my life. I've that stuff's all important to me, all of it.
Sure.
But this is one of those things that God said, you can go this way, and I'm going to support you on it. Yeah. And he still has. He's never taken his hand off of it. And a man can have a great relationship with God his whole life and be growing and everything, but there still can be some things in his life like, God, are you even working in this area? Do you even care about this area? Or, you just certain things.
Yeah.
But then there's also places that this is what he has for my life. And I don't even need to question it. Satan can't come near it. And a few of those things for me is my marriage now. Now that other marriage did end. It did end. And not by my hand. All right. I waited on the Lord, and she ended it, and I moved on.
Yeah.
But the marriage I have now, happily married 20 years, my 3 kids that I have with my wife, that is unquestionable. That is where God has me. There's nothing could happen that would separate me from that in my life. Okay. My work ethics, my jobs, stuff like that, obviously my faith, that I'm a saved sinner. Satan can't touch that.
Yeah.
I have some dark days, but I never, ever question that I'm saved, ever. It doesn't even enter into my mind.
Sure.
and this is where some of my brothers have a little hard time with it. Deer hunting is kind of right up there too. Not as important as my faith, but
Yeah.
I know that this is what God has had for me in my life, at least up till now. And he can change this. He can do anything he wants.
Yeah.
And he may change my heart. He may take my health. It's all good.
Yeah.
Whatever he decides. But if he's got the door open right now, I'm running through it. I am running through it.
Yeah.
And so that's probably a lot more than what you bargained for when you asked me about that story.
No, it's good
but
stuff, man.
That's why that first story is there in my book, and I'm glad that we kind of got to talk about the backstory a little bit too.
No, I love that, man. And God gave us the passions and the desires in life. Like he made you to love deer hunting. And he wants us. Jesus came to bring us life and life to the full. And as long as like you said, you're prioritizing your faith and your family first, obviously, but other than that, like he wants you to enjoy. He's a good father,
He is a great father, and one of my life verses is Psalm 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart.
Love that verse.
And when I heard that verse as an unbeliever, I would have interpreted it, the desires of my heart. Man, I want a new Ford pickup. Lord, you're going to give me that. No, that's not what that verse means. That means that if you delight yourself in the Lord, the desires that come out of your heart, the righteous desires, are from Him.
Yeah.
And again, I've had people argue with me like, he doesn't care about deer hunting. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. And these are some people that call themselves believers.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. No. He gave me desires in my heart. He gave me, my vocation, I talked about these other things, my family stuff. Like He's given me that desire for that. And I've met people that don't have a desire for their family. They don't have a desire for their job. Again, I know what I know. And I know that these desires, have come from the Lord, because I delight myself in the Lord. I love the Lord, man.
Absolutely.
And just all He's done for me, from saving me to all that He's poured into my life, man. I love Him. And so therefore I don't have to question these desires as long as they line up with Scripture. I'm not saying, the heart is deceitful above all things, the Bible says. You got to kind of go process that one too. You can't really trust your heart. Okay. In fact, don't trust your heart. But when you've compared your desires to the Word and they're lining up, and then you start seeing God, putting his stamp of approval, I call it, his thumbprint on it, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
The Old Testament talks about it, the signet ring, the stamp of approval. You put the ring on it. That you start seeing that, then what you know, and you don't need anybody else to tell you or anything.
Yeah.
You know it. And this is one of those things, and this desire that comes out of me to hunt big bucks, it's deep seated. It's part of my faith, and it's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And now, having said all that, I want to make sure people know that this stuff can become an idol.
Oh yeah.
And I've let that happen before too. And this is how I know when I've done it. If it's not bringing me peace and fulfillment and satisfaction, and it's only bringing me disarray to my life, let's just say I was having marriage problems. Now I would look to my hunting as one of the first things, because I'm pretty passionate about this. Is this causing problems?
Yeah.
And there's been times in my 20-year marriage where, I've had to change things on how I do it,
sure.
because it's not affecting my family right, and stuff like that. And so I don't want to make it sound like I'm perfectly balanced. No, I'm mentally unbalanced. That's just, that's just how I am. And so I have to rein that in.
Sure.
Sometimes. And I have to look at it and go, no, this is, the challenging thing about being a Christian, I find, is knowing how far to take things. And we have this great example right in front of me of hunting, because that's my life, but I've still seen this with other believers in other areas. We exceed our boundaries. All right. So like sex, like as I'm fully on board with what the Bible says, that God invented sex. It's pretty dang awesome. But it's confined within boundaries.
Right.
And his boundaries are marriage, right?
Sure.
Okay. So I've seen the same thing with these other, we'll just call them passions now. That's what we keep calling them with, so like for me with deer hunting, there are boundaries here. I don't want to make it sound like there are not. And when I have exceeded those boundaries, he's let me feel that pain.
Yeah.
All right. And so I just want to make sure, if I got some brothers out there that are listening to this, that maybe are kind of struggling with some of these things, that, he does give us boundaries. And that's part of that's how whether you have created an idol or not, because if the boundaries are set by you and not by the Lord, that's something we better look at.
Yeah.
And I've made that mistake before. That's why I think I can speak with a little bit of authority on it, because there's been times he's said, hey, do not go here, do not do this. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's the cool thing about we all talk about a relationship with the Lord. And that's why my friends that are, and some of these, I live in an area that's heavy with the Colts. And so some of my friends are into that stuff, and they're like, oh, no, God doesn't care about deer hunting. No. And I'm like, well, then what does he care about?
Yeah.
What did he give me this life for?
Right.
Just to work and die?
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And so it gets down to my personal relationship with him and understanding the word and being in the word and being part of a fellowship, and I go to church regularly, not to get a stamp of approval by my name, not to get a little star. No, man, I can earn no righteousness. That's what I love about the Christian message. The righteousness is from him, man.
Yeah.
I go to be fed, to be around other believers, to be strengthened, all of that stuff. And so that's how I keep my life on the path.
Totally.
Per se.
Yeah. And I love that you included that chapter at the end of your book, about, spiritual stuff. 'Cause, you say right there at the end, I mean, without your faith, you wouldn't be the man you are in terms of your family life and all that stuff too. But at the same time, like, your faith has got your life on track to the point where you can have a career and you can hunt and you can have a, part of your career at least be in the outdoor industry. So it's like, a lot of guys I think focus so much on their physical fitness and, shooting their bow and stuff. But don't realize that, like, if you don't have your spirit on track as well as your mental and physical fitness, like, you're not going to get the most out of life and be able to do what you love as much and hunt as much, And
worse yet, your life might be a total train wreck.
Right.
And that's what I put in that
Exactly.
last chapter. That last chapter is called Stuff for Christians and Those So Inclined.
Yeah.
It was more of a message to my brothers that are already there. I've not been very effective witnessing to non-believers. I don't know. I don't have that gift. I try. I don't get very far, but I've always been able to encourage my brethren and my brothers. And so I wrote that chapter primarily to my brothers that might be, maybe having a rough patch in their life, and about how God used hunting to clean up my life.
Yeah. Because,
back to my first marriage, a big part of that mess was me, and the way I was living my life. You can be on fire, born again, going to heaven, and still not living for the Lord, because he's so gracious. He saves us as sinners. And God used hunting and that experience that we spent the first half of the podcast talking about to encourage me to continue to clean up my life.
Right.
And as I said in that chapter, had I stayed on the path I was on, well, I'm 52 years old now. I'd probably be on my fourth marriage, have little kids strewn about everywhere.
Yeah.
Just a complete train wreck of a life. Would I be focused on buck hunting? Oh, no. I'd be focused on making that child support payment and all the mess that you create in your life. Heck, I'd probably be addicted to some substance by now.
Yeah.
Just trying to deal with it all.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry,
I didn't mean to cut you off. I come from a past, I have an addiction history, and I'll tell you right now, like, now that I'm clean and my life has been cleaned up, I mean, I'm doing stuff, hunting wise and fitness and everything that, like, I never imagined I would be able to do. But if your life is in the toilet, I mean, I could drag myself out to a tree stand a couple times a year, but I'm on a different level now. And it started with cleaning up my inside.
Absolutely, brother. And then that's why I'm trying to tie this all together, because it didn't just end on that mountain that day when I got that buck and I thought, okay, good. The Lord said I can go this way. No, he really began to empower me to clean up my life and make better decisions. And every better decision I would make would give me a clearer head, not living in guilt, I guess is the best way to say it. Because you're right. You can drag yourself out to that tree stand, but you're dragging with it a lot of guilt. And that doesn't make you a good hunter, guys. Sorry. No. It doesn't. You got to be focused and enjoying yourself, not worrying about, what you did last night. And so that's when I told you that little 18-year-old girl shared the gospel with me, basically how to get saved, and that Christ died for my sins. That was the first time I had really ever heard that God loves me and is actually interested in my day-to-day life. Because when you grow up in a cult, no, it's about going to church 3 hours on Sunday and worshiping on the right day and wearing the right clothes and, again, it gets down to the righteousness of man, And so when I heard that, that's what was attractive to me, that, whoa, he wants to be involved in my life. And so as I let him in and continued to let him in, and he came in and he cleaned up my life, he gave me peace. I was just like that demon possessed guy that was living in the graveyard, and Jesus came and broke his chains and saved him and healed him. Nice. And all those people came back and said, who's this crazy dude sitting at Jesus's feet here? He was just running around trying to kill people like a week ago. That was me, man.
Yeah.
I was sitting at his feet going, I don't know what just happened, but you have given me peace. You have saved me, and I want to follow you. Now, if you remember from that story, that guy wanted to go with Jesus, and Jesus said, no, you stay here. You stay here.
Go tell your
be
friends.
A witness to everybody in this area. Well, that's what hunting has been to me. And God left me here to be a witness, number one, to my hunting brothers, and hopefully to plant some seeds in those who may want to follow the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's why, every chance I get, I try to share my story. And that's why my book opened with it and end with it, because I know that as people, the devil lies to people and says, hey, if you follow God, your life's going to suck. It's going to be boring. You're going to have to go to church. You're going to have to read your Bible. You're going to give up all these, quote, freedoms.
Right.
And your life's going to suck. And I'm like, no, it's the opposite. That's the lie.
Yeah.
All these freedoms that you think you have,
chains.
I live with those freedoms. I can go sleep with any chick I want. I can go get drunk. I can go smoke pot. I can go do meth. I did all that stuff, people. I did all that stuff. That is not freedom.
No.
That is bondage.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolute bondage. And that is what the devil has tricked us into. It's thinking that is freedom. No. It is going to destroy your life while you're here. And then God forbid you don't get it cleaned up before you die. I don't even want to talk about what's going to happen after that. And so when you let him clean up your life and you start seeing that, no, this is what Jesus meant in John 10 when he said that I come to give them life and life abundant.
Yeah.
And he's standing just right against that lie of the devil that no, an abundant life is, tons of money and women or whatever, all the stuff that we put in there. That's not the abundant life. That doesn't lead to peace and joy and really helping you be, I'll just, it's kind of becoming a cliche right now, but really your best self. My best self is living for the Lord.
Yeah.
That's my best. That's the only way to be my best self. All right.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, man,
it goes back to that like discipline equals freedom type deal.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Man, I take care of my wife and my kids and, provide well for them. She's the number one person in this earth, on this earth for me,
Mm-hmm.
She's the number one human. I got to treat her as such. And when I'm following the Lord, I'm able to do that. Because remember, this all stuff might sound all high and holy. Man, I am a sinner. I mean, I smashed my finger with a hammer an hour from now, you can't believe the tirade that can come out of my mouth. And I hate it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. That's why I know I'm saved. I hate that, where I used to love to talk that way.
Yeah.
And that's just the old man, trying to hang on to me.
Yeah.
And so anyways, it all ties together for me. It's not just about deer hunting.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want people to know. And I hope maybe there's somebody out there that either reads my book or hears this podcast or something, that this can help them get their life on track, and they can know that they know this is what God wants me to do and where he wants me to go, because that is when this stuff starts to happen. Absolutely. That's when your life will start to come together, and you're going to see these things happen, and you're going to know that this is from the Lord.
Yeah.
And it was just like when Jacob laid down on that rock in the Old Testament, and he fell asleep, and he had that dream, and he saw those angels descending and ascending from heaven, on the ladder, and his life changed. And his life changed when he got in the wrestling match with God too. Mm-hmm. And those are all pictures of a man who, he was a conniver.
Yeah.
He was a liar.
Yeah.
Like, what was he called when he come out of the womb and he grabbed his brother's heel? A heel catcher, which was like not an endearing term.
Right.
He was always working an angle, and always, from birth, he was scamming. God changed his life, and he went on to do great things and have a great faith in the Lord, but he was still a sinner. You look in the Bible, you see all the stuff he screwed up, Yeah. And that's how we are. We're broken vessels, but we got the light of God in us shining out through those cracks. Yeah. And that's what I want to do with my hunting career, because honestly, if this is only about deer hunting, it's pretty vain.
Yeah.
And it's going to fold up and go away someday too.
Of course, yeah.
Your body quits cooperating, whatever, it's God's going to roll it up like a scroll and put it away at some point in my life too. I'm fully aware of that.
Yeah.
But if it's only about that, then yeah, it's pretty vain. But man, if I can take a few of my brothers with me, and I can encourage somebody, and I can get somebody to follow the Lord, and that's why I ended the book, with that verse that, Psalm 34:8, that, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts him. People, go try that. Just go try it. And I promise, if you are sincere and you are willing to give God your life, you're willing to accept the gift that Jesus gave us by dying for our sins, because while we were still sinners, he died for us. And I just challenge you to go give that a try. And I'm just telling you, I did. And I know he is real. It's for real. No atheist in the world, no nothing will ever talk me out of my experiences that I've had with him, and this journey with him.
Absolutely.
And that's why I keep saying, I know what I know. I don't know a lot of things in life. There's a lot of things I'm unsure about, but I know that I know that I am in the Lord and that he is in me. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Faith will make you a better man, better husband, better hunter. It's awesome that God allows us to enjoy his creation like that. I heard you say on another podcast one time that, and I think it's an interesting concept, I just wanted to bring it up with you real quick, that hunters see what they expect to see. And it's almost like, mindset's so important, like, having a positive attitude. And like the world would maybe even call it like the law of attraction or whatever, but it's actually like a biblical concept too. And I was just reading this morning, doing my little quiet time devotional thing, and I got to Proverbs 10:24. What the wicked dreads will come upon him, but the desires of the righteous will be granted. And it just kind of made me think about when you said like hunters see what they expect to see. If you're out there just like, there ain't no deer out here, blah, 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 it's going to shape your whole experience.
Right. Yeah. And that the context of when I talk about that, because I've talked about it on a lot of podcasts, is that if our attitude is everything, and I want people to know, I really don't have a great attitude in life. I struggle with negativity. I grew up around a little bit of negativity. And, so I've been exposed to that, and it's probably my bent. I just kind of lean that way. My wife always has to be like, hey, wait a minute, listen to that foolishness that's coming out of your mouth right now. And 99.9% of the time, she's exactly right. Wait, yeah, I can't do that.
Isn't it annoying how wives are right all the time?
Oh man, God knew what he was doing when he said, "Hey man, for most people, you need that helper.
Yeah,
you need to be married." Yeah, he's right.
Oh yeah, my wife has helped me out a lot.
Yeah, like my cowboy friend says, when my wife starts talking, I need to let my ears perk up a little bit. But anyways, so my attitude, your attitude, everybody's attitude, that pretty much what determines life. And you can go study anybody that's been successful in anything, believer or non-believer. They usually have a good attitude about what they're doing, or they just couldn't function. And so hunting is the same way. And you can be totally passionate about it. I just wrote a blog post on this a couple of weeks ago called "Motivation versus Self-Discipline," and you can be completely motivated about hunting and love it and everything. But when you get out there, most of the time you get spanked. Most of the time it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
I hunted 40 days last year and, didn't get a buck. I can't be bitter about that. I cannot be bitter about that. That's just the reality of hunting, and it's hard. It's hard. So you gotta do your due diligence, do your scouting, learn your craft, all that stuff. That's part of the journey. That's the fun part of it. But you can't get it all down in the mouth when things aren't going your way, or just go hunt elk. There's a lot more of them around than there are bucks. And so, you'll be happier doing that. And so that's what I mean when I say hunters pretty much see what they think they're going to see. And if they think it's going to suck and, all that stuff, then it's pretty much going to suck. And I try to remember that verse in the Bible. It's in Philippians. It says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about those things.
Yeah.
Okay, dude. And again, I don't think this stuff is all just on the spiritual level. I mean, God's word is alive and real. It's like a two-edged sword, and it applies to our life. And so I love that verse, and I always have to go back to it and remember that God's a positive thinker. If there's a positive thinker in the universe, it's God. He thinks on what is, what it says, noble, praiseworthy, pure, lovely, admirable, whatever's true. That's what God wants us to think on. And you just, that verse that you just quoted, I just read that the other day because I was doing Proverbs. Say it again.
Oh, really?
What was the verse?
Yeah. Proverbs 10:24, what the wicked dreads will come upon him, but the desire of the righteous will be granted.
There you go. And there's other places in Proverbs where that's reiterated. You know how Proverbs is, it'll say it one way, and then later on you read it and you're like, oh, I thought that verse was somewhere else. You go look it up and there's two of them and they're almost identical, but they say it different ways. So it's later in Proverbs too. And so and that stuff is peppered all throughout the Bible.
Sure, yeah.
Romans 4, there's one in there too, that God calls that which is not as though it is. And there's different translations of it. He calls that which does not exist as though it does exist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of his creative nature, because if we just go to go to Genesis, God just spoke all this into existence.
Yeah.
And the atheists are still going crazy over it. They got all it came from the Big Bang. It came from aliens, whatever. They cannot even wrap their minds around it. Oh, no. He just said it.
Yeah.
And so it is. Deal with it. And trust me, sometimes I have to deal with it too, because I have those doubts, and it's like, well, wait a minute. No. It is because he said it is. Well, that also, we're made in his image. So our words are so powerful.
Words have power.
And so what we expect to see, if we're talking it down, then it's probably going to suck.
Yeah.
That's really what that is all about. And
100%.
I don't do it right all the time. I get down too. Don't get me wrong. At the end of my 40th day last year of hunting on 2 or 3 great tags, and I was coming to the realization that I am not going to get a buck this year. Yeah, I was a little down, but I just lifted him up and said, God, how many guys get to hunt 40 days for big bucks on 3 great tags?
Exactly. Yeah.
You're not going to hear one complaint out of my mouth, Lord. And if you do, forgive me before it even comes.
Yeah.
And so this attitude thing is huge to me. And it's honestly, it's what's kept me going, because, if you ever decide to throw in for big mule deer and, that's what you're going to do, it's pretty dang discouraging.
Yeah, I bet. Well, and along that note, man, I kind of want to challenge you on something too. 'Cause, like you said, words have power, and, maybe you lean a little bit towards the negative side, but, I hear you say a lot that, you're a sinner, saved by grace. That is true. We all, well, at least from my perspective, we were sinners, but God's made you a new creation. You're now a new man. So I would just, I don't really refer to myself anymore as a sinner. I know I do sin, but I would just challenge you maybe to maybe call yourself a new man and don't call yourself a sinner so much.
And that's great advice, and I'm glad you're picking up on that. But I always want to remember I'm in mixed company here when I'm talking.
No, I hear you, man.
On a podcast, and one of the things that I because I've witnessed to a lot of unbelievers, and I've witnessed to a lot of people that they believe in something. Something like 95% of the world believes in God, but you really get talking to them and it's like, man, what kind of God is that? What have you made up in your mind?
Yeah.
I always try to remember I'm in mixed company.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest complaints I get from people that don't want to believe, that don't want to follow the Lord, is they think that I think I'm something,
right?
That I have arrived, I'm pure,
totally.
I'm holy. And then also remember my cult background that I come from. There's a lot of that in those cults that you are pure now.
Right.
I'm with you, brother. What you just said, that is accurate from the word.
Yeah.
That is accurate. We are a new creation.
Yeah. And I know what you're saying just comes from humility.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what you're saying, I know your heart, where your heart is. It's just coming from a place of humility, and that's right on. But I just seen on the other side of the coin too, it can be damaging to some people if you're just constantly like, I'm a sinner, because the church I grew up in,
right.
they pounded into your head so much that you're a sinner, you're this, you're bad, everything you think is of evil. And that's true when you're not saved, but then when you're born again, you're a new creation, and then you kind of have to work through that, okay, and if you keep saying I'm a sinner, I'm a sinner, I'm a sinner, you might turn out to be a sinner. So I'm just careful about that.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to make sure that as people listen to me, they don't think that, I have arrived, because
100%,
I will not make it through the day, and neither will you, without sinning today. Am I correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we sin for sure.
That's really what I mean right there, is that until God, folds up this old tent and takes me to heaven, we're still in the flesh.
Absolutely.
But I'm with you, and I take the admonishment, and the verse that you referred to, 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature.
Yeah.
Old things are passed away. Behold, all things have become new. I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah, man.
But I am still faced with the fact, if I walk out in the garage and hit my thumb with a hammer, it's not going to be good.
No, I hear you, man. I just what happened to me was that got drilled into me so hard in an unbalanced way that I got to a place where I started to believe subconsciously that anything that I enjoyed or wanted to do was inherently bad. There
you go.
And so that goes back to
you're right.
Yeah. And it goes back to the whole thing of God made us to love hunting. So if you have that unbalanced, and I know you're not there, but if you have that kind of unbalanced perspective of it, you can be like, well, I really like hunting a lot, so I shouldn't do it. But God doesn't want that.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. That's why I brought up that verse about if we delight ourselves in the Lord, he will give us the desires of our heart.
Yeah, man.
And but Satan gets in there and tries to confuse all that stuff,
twists it all up.
And. Yeah, so good discussion.
Yeah, man. couple more questions real quick, more like easier questions. Are you still good on time for a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm new. I've never killed a mule deer. This year I'm going to Kodiak in August to do a blacktail hunt. I'm probably going to film for, Lord willing, if it works out, I'm going to be filming for Dan Staten of Elk Shape in September on, following him around, shooting the elk, hopefully. And then I'm going to be doing an antelope hunt in October. But so mule deer is not on my menu for this year, but I've started kind of building up some points in various states, started last year. So, I mean, just from a kind of a high level view, for me and other guys might be listening that got mule deer out in the next 1 or 2, 3 years out, what are some tips for like new guys that we would give?
Buy my book.
Yeah, your book is good. That is a good tip.
Shameless plug. Dude, I'm only going off of what hundreds of people have told me, that it really helps shorten their learning curve.
Yeah.
When as a new hunter. And, because even though it's written kind of for the crowd of hunting big mule deer, it's still, I think I even said it somewhere in the book, that even if you're not into the whole big mule deer thing, I promise you, even if you're just, trying to fill the freezer, happier with a smaller buck, all that stuff, that these tips and tactics that I give in there are going to get you there so much faster. And I'll say this, dude, and this is not being cocky. If it's about just filling my freezer, 99% of years I will be done opening morning, or at least opening day. It might take till the nighttime to have a branch antlered, decent, mature buck in my pack, because this stuff that I share in there is timeless. I mean, it just works. And I'm talking about still hunting, tracking, ambush hunting, glassing. That's a huge one for mule deer right there. If you'll get those things nailed down, you will be successful so much faster. And the way I try to write my book is it's from hunting deer from high country to low country, because I have not hunted in the East, but when I read a lot of whitetail stuff.
Yeah.
If you look on my blog, I've reviewed a bunch of whitetail books, because I think we can learn from all deer hunters.
Sure.
It seems to me like we call them zones out here. Like if a mule deer lives in the high country zone, that means he lives above timberline for the most part. That you hunt a certain way in that zone. But you might move 5 miles away and be in completely a different zone. You may be down in the desert, and or you may be hunting in foothill, sagebrush steep country, or maybe even river bottoms. So what I'm trying to say here, it seems like when I talk to my whitetail friends, their geographical area, of a few hundred miles is pretty much the same tactics. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but they're hunting in tree stands, they're hunting trails. The deer, we live in Alabama, it's super brushy here. And, we just put up a tree stand and this is how we hunt. I can talk to a guy that lives 150 miles away in Texas, or might have my mileage wrong there, and he's kind of hunting the same way if it's the same country. We're here, dude. You're changing tactics with everywhere that you go, and then the conditions too. I mean, there can be one mountain on one side of the valley that's awesome for glassing, and I jump to the other side of the valley. The only way I'm gonna kill big deer there is by tracking. So therefore I got to wait for the snow. I got to wait for the right conditions. And so that's why I think it's really important to be able to handle all those different techniques almost seamlessly, because you can't just be a one-trick pony. A lot of guys, you hear about glassing in the West. It's still your number one technique. It really is. You do have to nail it down. But if that's all you ever do, oh man, I would be missing half or a third of my big bucks, because a lot of them, all glassing did was tip me off on where to hunt. I still had to get in there and get in their living room to kill them. And so that's why being able to handle those tactics, and that second to last chapter in my book, I think it's called The Complete Mule Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
That right there is talking about, switching from technique to technique to technique on one single hunt. And that was, even though that wasn't a real hunt, that was a conglomeration of hunts in my brain over the years of where I've had to do those things. And I might have started off tracking, and then I switched to glassing, and then I switched to still hunting, and then I set up an ambush, and bam, I started glassing again, and there he is.
Yeah.
And so it's bringing all that stuff together, where some of my whitetail buddies, I mean, you look at the Benoist in the northeastern part of the United States, man, I don't even think they have binoculars. You know,
Right.
Why would they need them? I mean, and they don't really do anything but track unless there's no snow.
Right.
You know, and then they'll set up some ambushes. You know what I mean? And so you got to be a little more creative than that when you're hunting deer. You know, unless you just have one place that you hunt, you always only go there. There's some really good deer hunters that do that, but I find that can be pretty restrictive if you want to get a big buck, because big bucks are like crops, and you know, one area is good one year, and then it's not good for 10 more years. And then the whole tag situation right now, that's just changing everything.
Right.
That you know, you just don't know where you're going to be hunting.
Right.
We kind of opened the podcast with that, like, you know, I don't know where I'm going to be. Because I don't know what I drew yet.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of be ready for that stuff too.
Well, like, just, I'd say, like, tags aside, like, if you could pick, like, maybe a season, like, if it'd be like, I would do, or a season in a state, like, from a high level, like, what would you pick for a first mule deer hunt? Like, would you say, I would go, you know, do high country Colorado, or I would do late season Wyoming, or, like, you know, what would you say for a first one that's good?
If somebody is from east of the Mississippi, and they're not used to high country, it is so much harder than what people believe. And even just being in shape sometimes doesn't get it done. It's a good way to see deer. That's why high country hunting is popular. There's not a lot of cover up there. The reason there's not a lot of cover up there, because even right now on, you know, May 26th, there's, you know, 4 to 6 feet of snow in some of that country. And so the growing season is so short that it just cannot grow big vegetation, big spruce, you know, big pine, you know, stuff like that. And then the wind in a lot of places stunts the growth of you know, you'll find trees, but they can only grow out of the ground about 3 feet, and then they're bent.
Yeah.
And so what that does is it makes for a lot of open country, and that open country is able to get a lot of sunlight to the ground, obviously, because nothing's shading it. And so, you know, it grows some good feed. And so it's a good place to see deer. That's why it's popular. But, you know, a lot of people, and I shouldn't even say Eastern guys, I mean, I know Western guys that just are completely blown away how hard it is to hunt high country from a physical standpoint, you know, from a backpack standpoint. So I wouldn't steer people away from it. I would just tell them, you know, to make sure you have a very healthy dose of reality of what you're getting into. You know, go with somebody if you can, because, you know, just turning up the wrong canyon, you know, because it's your first trip in there, you know, you may burn an extra 3 to 10,000 calories just trying to correct your mistake, you know, and you may lose an entire day or two of hunting from just simply being in the wrong place. And, you know, you don't just, it's pretty easy to listen to a podcast and like, oh yeah, we hunt this ridge one day and that ridge one day, you know, everything's on our back. Those are usually very experienced hunters that are doing that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of the first, and I had a scouting service for 20 years, and I would help guys. And so some of this is just direct experience of hunters just telling me, man, I never even made it to that place where you told me to go. I just physically could not get there. And man, that was like an eye opener to me, like, really? And I guess then I had to kind of think, I guess this just isn't what you're used to. So keep that in mind. But that can be a really fun hunt because you see a lot of deer. Your next zone in the West is kind of your foothill sagebrush, brush zone. And there's deer in those zones all year round, but they're pretty hard to hunt until you get the snow and the rut. And so you want to try to hunt those kind of areas typically after November 1st. And that's really going to get down to, it's very hard to get tags then. That's when the mule deer are, you know, most vulnerable. So a lot of states have clamped down on them. But, you know, that's going to be your your third season Colorado, some of your second season. It's going to be kind of your later tags in Idaho. It's going to be the Montana general season is a lot that way because it doesn't open until late October, runs till late November. Some of your Nevada tags will be that way, although they're very, very hard to get, but there's a few that are open after Halloween. Utah does not have a lot of rut hunting unless you're willing to hunt with primitive weapon. There are a few tags out there that allow you to hunt after November 1st, but if you're willing to hunt with a muzzle loader, although their muzzle loaders aren't primitive, you can put a scope on them and everything, so they're kind of like a single shot rifle. But they have some late archery seasons and stuff like that. That's going to put you into that time frame. But what I'm trying to get at is, don't go hunt that type of country in October unless you have a guide or a friend that's like, hey, this is where the bucks are, this is how you get in there, this is how you see them. That can be a big leg up. Moving into there is another kind of really good time to hunt them is the late August, mid to late August. Those are almost always bow seasons. There are a few rifle tags open at that time. They almost always draw. I think 90% of them are draw from about August 15th to about September 15th. That's a good time to catch deer out in the open and really in any of these habitats. They just have not moved into the cover for the majority of the day yet. By then, it seems like you get past about early October, mid-October. They're just laying low, and brush is their friend. So I would think through some of that stuff. But if I would never discourage. I don't want to discourage anybody from living in Pennsylvania, packing up and coming out west. Because I've met some dang good hunters from those states that are out there that don't grow up in mule deer country, but they always have something in common. They know what the heck they're doing, whether that was some of them can go 5 years without getting a deer and it doesn't bother them. Most guys aren't wired that way. They're going to give up. Sometimes they've just paid the school of hard knocks and they've come out enough and they failed enough that they've got their skill set together, and then they just go on to they're as good as any Western hunter. But more often than not, they've usually started with an outfitter or a guide or a good friend. They had a big leg up when they came out here, so they didn't just have to make all those mistakes that that you make when you're either a new deer hunter or you're trying to switch from whitetail hunting to mule deer hunting. They found a way to get into success earlier so that they don't have to spend that 3 or 4 or 5 years, making mistakes. Totally. And it can be 50 years, by the way, for some guys. I know some Western hunters that have literally spent 40 or 50 years in good mule deer country, Boone and Crockett mule deer country, and they've never killed a big buck. So you can, certain people can, for whatever reason, never get it. That usually has to do with them shooting the first nice buck they see, right, by the way. But, and there's no problem in that if that's what they're after. But, those are kind of some of the ways I think about mule deer. And now you've got to look a couple of years ahead, and it sounds like you are, trying to get some points and everything. Although I think our point systems are going to be under major modification here at some point in the future, because they're not just producing what people were hoping. And people are actually, this is so funny, Hunter, of what's changed in my life. When how old are you?
34.
Okay, so when I was 34, it was all about the points. Any state that had a random draw, you just ignored it. Like, why would you have a random draw? That's so stupid. And now it's the opposite. The states that have a random draw, those are the ones people are kind of excited about, because they're like, I actually have a chance, where in these other states, it's like, I have no chance. I just went to 0 points for Nevada. And, I was looking at how many tags are drawn in the 0 point level. I thought, what, I just need to be comfortable that I'm supporting wildlife by buying this license to apply, because I am not going to draw. And sure enough, I did not draw, and I did not apply for even a hard hunt. So, that's kind of what's changed. So you need to be thinking about that a little bit ahead of time, building some points in states that allow them, playing the game in states that have random, and, really, doing anything you can to get a tag, because that's going to be the challenge going forward. Unless we can really get mule deer herds to increase, tags are going down, not up right now. And you may be, ready to hunt, able to hunt, all of that stuff, and you may have nowhere to go.
Yeah. Dang. Well, that's good. But yeah, you got to play the long game. I've learned that. Definitely the Western hunting, got to play the long game for sure.
Absolutely. Let me recommend some other books too. If you're coming out west to archery hunt, make sure you read David Long's second, well, it's about his fourth book, but it's his second mule deer only book. It's called The Edge.
Okay.
And he wrote it along with Mike Duplan, who is an editor at Western Hunter Mag, great writer, big buck hunter. Mike's not so much into the archery part of it. You'll enjoy his rifle stories though, but David really took the archery to the next level. And out here, David is kind of one of the people that put high country archery buck hunting on the map. Nice. And he had he was a good deer hunter before he started archery hunting. But when he started archery hunting, he just got plugged in with the right people. That's how I know him. He knew I was doing well at high country archery hunting, and he had me write a couple chapters in his first book. That's how I got to know him, because he didn't have any archery content. By the time he put out his second book, man, he was writing the archery content. And The Edge is really good if you want to come and do that. And David is really into the technical planning, the hunts. I'm not so much. I'm more the storyteller. You need to read my stories and pull the good stuff out of them.
Yeah.
Where David is really good at breaking down, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. This is how you scout. This is what the mountain looks like. He's really good at that stuff. So that's one to look at if you're going to do archery, high country deer. Another one that's just make you a good hunter, and it's an old book, is Dwight Shoes. What's the name of his book? I just lost it. It's bow hunting mule deer. You can't miss it. It's on Amazon. I'll type it in here. But that's a really, really good book. It's it's old, so it's kind of it'll feel basic if you've got some of this stuff. Yeah. But it's still
good stuff.
You need to read it. It's called Hunting Open Country. Hunting open country mule deer, and it's virtually all archery, and that's a really, really good one.
Cool.
Let me think of some of the other ones. If you're going to be hunting, if you go to my blog on rokslide.com, ROK slide.com, you will see I have reviewed almost all these books I'm talking about on there. But another good one, if you're going to be hunting low country deer, is Dennis Winch's. God rest his soul. He just died about a year and a half ago. But he was able to get a book out and left us with a lot of mule deer knowledge. This is like one of those 70-year-old guys who's been hunting mule deer since he was, I don't know, as soon as he got weaned. And so there's a ton of good stuff in there. He kind of hunted the lower country. Like I told you out here, we have a lot of zones that mule deer live in. And so he was more the desert juniper type country, and he did really well on big mule deer. And he's a lot like David. He's a lot of this, just the how-to. This is how I did it. Do this, do that, do this. Some good stuff. That's a really good one as well. But read that stuff. And that will really shorten your learning curve. The final one I'll mention, it's kind of a controversial one because the guy got in trouble a little bit because there was a few things he wasn't doing right. But Kurt Darner's How to Find Giant Bucks. That's the one that put big mule deer on the map for the nation. I don't care what anybody says. I remember when that book came out in the 80s. He was really the first guy that put a pen to paper and really showed people how to find big bucks. And that's a good classic one to read. But I really do believe that you can glean a lot of this stuff if you don't have a good buddy that lives in the West that's taking you hunting. Books are where it's at, and Kurt Darner's book is the one I wrote about it in my book.
Yeah, I remember.
Read it. I mean, it's kind of probably considered basic now, but oh man, that guy thinks like a deer hunter, and there's a lot of good stuff there.
Nice, man. Awesome. Well, it's a lot of great info. Maybe, maybe next year, if I end up doing mule deer in 2022 or something, I can have you back on and dive more into like specifics of mule deer hunting. But this has been an awesome conversation, man.
Yeah. Good. I know I talk in kind of real general about it. And again, it gets down to these microclimates they live in. But if we knew where you had it tagged, and okay, this is the kind of deer hunting it is, then we could really like, okay, man, I know this is how I would hunt. That's where I can really start to get into the specifics.
Yeah. So maybe in the future we can do that, maybe next year or something.
Sure.
That'd be awesome. Well, man, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. It's been great talking to you and catching up.
Yeah, you bet, man. Thank you. I'm glad there's a podcast out there where we can talk about this stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's been really good talking to you. Hope we can stay in touch and maybe meet in person one day. But until then, man.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, thanks again for your time.
You bet. God bless your podcast, man. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it, man. Keep me in prayer, man.
I will do.
All right, brother. Thanks again.
Thanks again for listening to the Hunter's Quest podcast, and make sure you stay up to date on social media at The Hunter's Quest on Instagram and The Hunter's Quest podcast on Facebook. And we'll have all kinds of photos and videos from my day-to-day, as well as stuff from the awesome guests we're having on here. As always, I'm more than happy to connect with you guys if you have questions about hunting or spiritual stuff or gear, fitness, whatever. Just drop me a line in my DMs, or you can email me at hunter@thisishuntersquest.com. If you like what you're hearing, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and leave me a rating and a review. That's really helpful. And don't forget to share with your friends. So stay tuned, lots of cool stuff in the works, and I'm really excited to continue this quest together.